I'm going to talk about the social issue of cultural representation, which is present because we are increasingly questioning more and more who the creators and the objects of knowledge are, and with how much accuracy they are depicted. Like Tim Amanda illustrated in her conference The Dangers of a Single Story, the lack of cultural representation often brings about the invisibilization of certain unprivileged collectives, as well as their specific narratives and perspectives. In order to analyze the depiction of griots or jellies, I subsequently present an example of the way in which they have been depicted in literature. So I'm going to talk about the figure of jellies in Lawrence Hill's Book of Negroes. This is a story about slavery and the abuses that are intertwined with it. The main character, Aminata, was captured and brought to America to serve as a slave. Aminata wants to be a jelly, but jellies are unleashed, as they had to be born in a special family, as we can see in the text. To become a jelly, you had to be born into a special family. I used to wish that I had been, for the honor of learning and retelling the stories of our village and our ancestors. Moreover, this elite did not traditionally admit women among their circles, so Aminata's dream to be a carrier of the ancestral knowledge of her people would initially seem to be unattainable. Thus, jellies are portrayed as extremely wise and mystical characters, perhaps a bit idealized, and the social differences between jellies and commoners are further emphasized by the barriers to access this position. An oral tradition does have some benefits as well, and I have chosen this quote by De Sousa Santos to illustrate it, which says, "Learning results from debates between activists, leaders of social movements, social scientists, intellectuals, and artists. That the dialogues established between academic knowledge and popular knowledge aims to reduce the distance between them and make academic knowledge more relevant to concrete social struggles." When we talk about popular knowledge, it's not just griots and folk costumes. Popular knowledge is also pop art, rap, novels, video games, all kinds of dances, comics. Even our gastronomy says something about our culture. Popular knowledge is found in products that we are consuming all the time, and it is even more present in the current society as we are constantly receiving cultural stimuli through technological devices. So, people should stop and think, what is the culture we consume telling us about ourselves, and what does it imply at an individual and at a social level? Because these questions are extremely relevant. Reflection on contemporary culture can lead us to a better insight into modern social schemes, and moreover, understanding these social schemes allows us to challenge and reformulate them in order to evolve our social consciousness. So if we merge popular knowledge with academic knowledge, we can get interdisciplinarity and interculturality. This is an open debate between artists, intellectuals, and all kinds of people from different cultural backgrounds, from different disciplines. And this is how we can create new knowledge and have an equality of knowledges, which is really important to achieve because we have a lot to learn from one another. Um, This can also be related to the concept of co-learning coined by Paulo Freire in his book Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Paulo Freire believes in the student as a co-creator of knowledge, where he is allowed to question what he is taught and engage in a discussion. In this way, they are able to put forward their personal interpretations and elaborate the original sources. So, in Pedagogy of the Oppressed, the Brazilian educator Paulo Freire proposes a different educational method. This book was born out of the awareness of the existence of social classes and the matter of hegemonic relationships. Therefore, if we're talking about pedagogy of the oppressed, who are the oppressed? Freire begins from the premise that everyone strives to save their identity as humans, but the oppressed struggle for it, because they have been dehumanized. Therefore, the oppressed need to fight to regain their humanity and rights, and this has been reflected in diverse activist movements like feminism, the LGBTI community, Black Lives Matter, anti-ableist movements, to cite only a few examples. Therefore, taking this as a start point, and based on the notions proposed by Francesca Ferrando in philosophical posthumanism, may Freire be advocating for the need of a posthumanist turn in education. This is, in discriminating against the aforementioned collectives, we have relegated them to the margins or peripheries of humanity. Thus, should we not revise our concept of humanity so that it can transcend the notion of hegemonic normality, and extend education so that it covers these margins? Here we could cite de Souza again, when he refers to a sociology of absences, because these collectives that have been dehumanized have also been brought to invisibility. Should education not represent and be accessed equally by all collectives, and hence the need for an equality of knowledges enters the conversation. Nowadays, it is still argued whether griots are something that belongs to the past or whether there are current figures that could be referred to as. On the one hand, as Patricia Tang discusses in her article, the rapper as modern griot, musicians and rappers are often described in these terms. Positive Black Soul is a hip-hop group based in Senegal. In their lyrics, they have a mixture of French, English, and Wolof, which is a local Senegalese language, and they use traditional instruments to accompany their songs. This group has a solid activist take. Cause I'm the storyteller, the teacher, the preacher. Coming to my heart, I wanna meet you. Hey girl, hey boy, I will teach you how to build and how to destroy. How to live in harmony with the forces of the nature. Then nothing will never separate you from the motherland, a Kebu land. With this around the corner, Nubian. Now that you got an invitation, the jig of a jello will take you in a trip of meditation. So in this song we have a different cultural representation of jellies, and it talks about the relevance of how they help people reconnect with their roots. And the concept of motherland is really interesting because it is a space where human beings merge with nature. PBS takes posthumanism a step further in suggesting that human beings should be decentered and understood in equality to nature to which they belong. Occidental culture would have a lot to learn from this notion in terms of avoiding the climate change crisis, because once we determine that humanity belongs to nature, there is no sense in hurting it. They also use traditional African griot instruments like the kora to reconnect with their roots. Moreover, Derek B. Aldrich, in his article Teachers in the Movement, Pedagogy, Activism, and Freedom, makes a simile between griots and teachers, as they are in charge to transmit knowledge to future generations, and this is why the philosophy of the pedagogy of the oppressed is so important for social advancement. I would go a step further and assert that all kinds of artists are griots in some way, as they are storytellers and in charge of portraying cultural identities.